Hey team, Zhylaw here! Alright, another video log! Yes! Oh, excitement! Today, I want to talk to you guys about two upcoming MMOs that a lot of people have been talking about, and my thoughts on them. Wildstar and ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, the Elder Scrolls, whatever. Okay, first, Wildstar. My thoughts on Wildstar. And of course, these games are still upcoming. They're not released yet. But I would consider myself an informed consumer and gamer as much as one can be about games that are not out yet. As far as Wildstar goes, I've watched a lot of streaming of it. In particular, I've watched Tally playing it. He's been allowed to stream it by Carbine. I've also played it a little bit. I can't talk about my experiences too much, NDA and so forth. But I've seen it, so I can talk about that as well. And of course, I've scoured the internet for information. My thoughts on Wildstar. When I initially heard about Wildstar, I was excited because the housing system looked amazing. And as a more RP story-centered guy, I really liked housing in my games. Plus, World of Warcraft has ignored housing forever, so you know I'm starved for decorating. Also, some other Wildstar systems look cool. I like the idea of action combat and telegraphing. And who doesn't want to be a robot? A playable robot race in basically a Empire kind of clone from Star Wars. So it looked interesting. Plus it had sci-fi elements, spaceships mixed in with fantasy to try and mix it up a little bit. But then I actually played it and saw it in action, and my hype kind of evaporated. The combat system is very actiony. There is telegraphing, which, you know, means that you see things on the ground, you gotta dodge, and a lot of your abilities are telegraphed, so you have to line them up. But it wasn't quite as actiony as I had pictured in my mind. Yes, compared to WoW, the combat's very fast-paced. But it still has a lot of abilities and rotations and cooldowns, and it has a soft targeting, and the dodge is a little clunkier than I would like. So it's not enough of a step forward for me. Like, in my mind, I was picturing combat like Terra or Neverwinter. So yes, if you compare it to a slower-based combat system, it is definitely a step forward. But it's not enough of a step forward for me to make it the creme de la creme. But in general, the combat system was pretty cool. My realist hype deflation thing was the realization that they just don't take their game seriously. And this is going to sound kind of silly, but I like MMOs that take themselves and their lore seriously. A little bit of humor is fine. Like World of Warcraft has humor sprinkled with, you know, without the game, lots of puns and Easter eggs and little jokes. But in general, World of Warcraft takes the story very seriously, and it is a, you know, dark in many regards, just like Warcraft 3, had a very serious story. And the art style may be kind of exaggerated and cartoon-esque, but that's just to make it compatible with, you know, the vast majority of computers. It's not cartoony because it's targeted to children. And I think when Carbine started making their game, and they made it cartoony, they didn't realize that the cartoon is just a means to an end, that they're not actually supposed to make it like a big Saturday morning cartoon and a joke. You know, to coin a phrase, you never go full cartoon, okay? You know, like half cartoon's okay. You don't go full cartoon. And World of Warcraft, Blizzard knows that. With Wildstar, the moment I started playing it, the moment I started watching somebody playing it, it was just a big joke. Like the opening vignette should be serious, and dark and gloomy. And it was like, haha, break the fourth wall, look how funny and silly we are. Also, the art style was off-putting. people are like, oh, it's cartoon, WoW's cartoon, they're both the same. No. World of Warcraft, it has that cartoony art style, but Wildstar takes it further. It has like a Pixar kind of shading to it, which is almost painful for me to look at. Once again, you don't go full cartoon. Now, this might not matter to some people who don't care what they're looking at and don't care about the story and stuff, and it's just a means to an end to get to raiding or PvP, and that's fine. But for me personally, I was initially turned off, and completely turned off, by the exaggerated art that goes all the way, and the story and the tone of the game, which is just too silly. There's so many silly races and jokes, and there's so much ridiculous amounts of humor that you can't even see what the actual story is sometimes. I don't like that. I don't like that. I'm not saying every game has to be like super emo, oh, I'm going to cut myself, but I want my game to know when it has to be serious, and I don't see that in Wildstar, so I'm probably not going to get it at launch, and I'll keep an eye out for it. But I will say the combat system definitely is a step forward, and the housing is awesome. I'm not disappointed by the housing system. I've seen the housing system at work, and it's everything they promised, and it makes me bemoan the fact that WoW doesn't have something like that even more. But it's not something that, you know, I'd buy a game just for. But the housing is legit. I would definitely say the housing is nice. If you don't care about silliness or the tone or the look of a game, and you just want World of Warcraft with faster combat, Wildstar might be the game for you. Just keep that in mind. It's almost like playing the Deadpool game. I don't know if you guys have played the recent Deadpool game. The whole game was a big joke, breaking the fourth wall constantly, and I didn't like that. Yes, Deadpool is known for breaking the fourth wall, but there is a story in between those moments of humor. In Deadpool, the entire game was just one big joke, and it kind of turned me off. Same deal. Moving on to Elder Scrolls Online. Right now, actually, as I'm filming this, there's currently a beta weekend, and there's no NDA, and I've been watching people streaming it, and I've been in the trenches, so we can talk about it. ESO looks really nice. I will say I very much like the art style, you know, compared to Wildstar. It's nice to see game going realism. I prefer realism. The graphics are gritty. I like the UI. It's very clean. The music's fantastic. They put a lot of effort in the voice work and the quests. But I think it's a bit lacking when it comes to meat on the bones. The content is a bit light. I don't like that the dungeons are 4 people. They couldn't even handle 5 people dungeons. And there's no raiding. Instead, they have outdoor adventure zones. Kind of reminds me of Guild Wars 2. A lot of the game actually reminds me of Guild Wars 2. Also, the biggest issue I've been having with ESO is not even has to do with the game, but the greed of the publisher. I don't know if you've been following it at all, but they've been doing some really questionable decisions when it comes to the monetization of the game. First, they said that if you pre-order, you could play any race on any faction, which is insane, because that is huge. Since it's a faction, you know, it's kind of like Alliance and Horde, but it's 3 factions, and they split up the Elder Scrolls races with different factions. The ability to play any race in any faction is crazy. To make it a pre-order bonus is unbelievable. And then they announced the collector's edition called the Imperial Edition, and you have to buy the Imperial Edition if you want to be an Imperial. Again, what the fuck? You're putting a race behind a paywall, and not just any race, but the Imperials were one of the most popular races in Elder Scrolls. And if you want to be an Imperial, you have to buy the Collector's Edition. And yes, there's talk about how you can do it after launch as well and stuff, but it doesn't matter. They're still making you pay extra for it. It's just really weird. Plus, they're launching the game with the store. It's going to have an expensive box, a subscription, and a store. And there's lots of talk about how they plan to eventually switch to free-to-play and then just flesh out the store, in which case, why not launch it free-to-play? But obviously, they're doing that to recoup development costs at the beginning, and it makes me very nervous because, you know, when a company gets a little too hungry for money, it means that it might eventually become pay to win. And also it means that too much effort might be spent on monetization and not on the game itself. And that really is a put off for me. So because of that, I'm like, eh. But also, it's just very light in the content, and I don't like... Again, it reminds me a little bit of Neverwinter and Guild Wars 2 in that it's all about story and exploration, not large-scale content, which is kind of the focus of all theme park MMOs, has traditionally been large-scale content with your guild. If they wanted to make it a sandbox, then they didn't have to do that. But they didn't make it a sandbox. It's a theme park. And I like theme parks, actually. But a theme park without large-scale content, it's like, oh, you can do Adventure Zone. It's big. And I don't know. It's not the same. They're not calling it a raid. And if they're not calling it a raid, then it's probably not a raid. But it does seem to have a lot of lore, a lot of Elder Scrolls lore. It also reminds me of SWTOR in that the leveling experience is probably going to be actually a lot of fun. But once you hit cap, what are you going to have to do? The PvP is supposed to be amazing, siege warfare, kind of like Guild Wars 2. But I personally don't play a MMO just for PvP. Actually, I'm not really a big PvPer in general. So I would say if you're a big Elder Scrolls fan, maybe pre-order Elder Scrolls and check it out. But if you're just looking for an MMO to play and you don't care that it's Elder Scrolls, which is a lot of people, myself included, I would say wait, hold off, because we should see where they're going to take their transaction model, because it's kind of scary. Plus, you want to wait and hear from people that have reached max level, like 2 months into the game. What is there to do? What are people doing? Do they run out of things to do and hit a brick wall like in SWTOR? And kind of like in Guild Wars 2 when it first launched? Or is there going to be lots of very interesting content? So I would say if you're a big Elder Scrolls fan, it does have a lot of Elder Scrolls lore. And it's fully voiced, and they spent a lot of money on voice actors. So if you're big into Elder Scrolls and you don't mind the fact that it is an MMO, don't forget that part, and it might also go free to play, and who knows what. If that's okay with you, I would say go for it. But if you don't give a shit that it's Elder Scrolls, you're just looking for a great MMO to play, I would say wait to see what there is actually to do once you run out of traditional content. And also to wait and see how hungry for money the publisher is going to get. So those are my thoughts on Wildstar and ESO. I will also be doing a review video of World of Warcraft, the Ultimate Visual Guide. I'm making it a separate video because, you know, if I didn't, I would just be talking about it now and people have to sift through everything. But if you're interested in my thoughts on the World of Warcraft Visual Guide, stay tuned for that. That's it. Cheers. Stay awesome. And etc., etc.